The outrage coming from many different corners. About Kevin Spacey's response this week to accusations he was sexually inappropriate with a minor. On Sunday, actor Anthony Rapp publicly accused the two-time Oscar winner of making a sexual advance toward him when he was just 14 years old, telling BuzzFeed that Spacey invited Rapp to his apartment for a party in 1986, ended up picking Rapp up, placing him on his bed, and climbing on top of him, making a sexual advance. Spacey quickly released a statement via Twitter saying, in part, "I honestly do not remember the encounter, but if I did behave then, as he describes, I owe him the sincerest apology for what would have been deeply inappropriate drunken behavior." Spacey then went on to say, "This story has encouraged me to address other things about my life. I have loved and had romantic encounters with men throughout my life, and I choose now to live as a gay man." That enraged a lot of people. One comedian, Billy Eichner, tweeted, "Kevin Spacey has just invented something that has never existed before, a bad time to come out." Then today, as you probably know, Netflix suspended production of House of Cards, in which Spacey stars. The International Academy of Television Arts and Sciences withdrew a planned award. And the Old Vic Theatre in London, where Spacey was artistic director from 2004 to 2015, set up a confidential email address for people to share complaints. Joining me now to talk about all this are Gina Scaramella. She's the executive director of the Boston Area Rape Crisis Center. Gina, it's good to see you. E.J. Graff, the managing editor of the Washington Post Great Monkey Cage blog and a senior fellow at Brandeis University's Schuster Institute for Investigative Journalism. EJ, it's good to see you
It's a pleasure to be here.
as well. If Kevin Spacey had said, "I did it, I'm humiliated, I can't apologize more, I never did anything like this again," end of discussion. That's all he said. Where would we be right now?
That's a good question. I think one of the things that's so interesting about these cases is whether it's Weinstein or this case, there's always something else about it that grabs us to talk about. Weinstein, the wealth, the films, et cetera, and with Spacey, it's the coming out and that kind of stuff. So,
but if it had been nothing else, had he taken the correct course here?
Yeah, I think it would have had him stand out significantly because that's not something we ever hear from people who are accused.
And the issues here are twofold that I think have upset a broad spectrum of people. One, this notion he's trying to turn a story of sexual assault into his own coming out thing. And two, and this particularly matters in this region after the situation with the Catholic Church, he essentially conflates pedophilia and homosexuality. I mean, those are the two sins of this, yes?
Which we worked so hard to separate. Yes. I don't know if you saw Dan Savage's tweet.
I did not.
It was great. He tweeted, "I'm sorry, Mr. Spacey, but your application to join the gay community at this time has been rejected. You may reapply in 57 years.
And by the way, we should say about Spacey, in prior interviews through the years, when he's been asking about his sexual orientation, he has said, "I'm not going to talk about it. I am never going to talk about it," which lends more credence to the notion he used this opportunity purely to do a CYA kind of thing in a question where he had been accused of serious sexual assault, no?
Yeah, and he also used, that I was drunk as another very common reason for people to excuse their behavior.
I often in situations like this cite a guy who I have great respect for, who was responsible for Melanie's Law, which is the drunk driving law. And when we would talk to him, it was the grandfather of Melanie Powell, was killed by a drunk driver, would often say, well, that guy was only stopped once for drunk driving. And he would always say, anybody who's caught drunk driving once has probably driven drunk 80 times, 100 times. This is all we know so far, the thing with Rapp. It's
not, though.
What are we hearing?
Gawker has been reporting on allegations for years, or it was before.
But with no names, if I'm not correct. Okay.
Correct.
But I mean, in terms of, so the only person who has come out so far and said I was assaulted is Rapp. Is it likely, whether it's because of what we know from Gawker or based your history with survivors, it is likely that this was not a one and done with, I think he was 26 years old then and Rapp was 14. It's likely this is part of a pattern, is it not?
Well, we certainly wouldn't be surprised if that were the case, absolutely.
The thing that a lot of people, I'm sure this drives you as nuts as it drives me, why don't the survivors in these cases, why don't they say something earlier? Why do they wait so long? That is something that I can't even handle dealing with. I want to deal with another aspect of this, the Quentin Tarantino aspect of this. Tarantino, as you know, said, I knew enough to do more than I did about Weinstein. There are so many people coming out of the woodwork now who are not victims, who are not survivors, who are saying, Rosie O'Donnell tweeted to Spacey, you don't remember the incident 30 years ago? F you, Kevin. Like Harvey, we all knew about you. I hope more men come forward. If you all knew about Kevin Spacey, why did you not say something so that there were not more Anthony Rapps on his checklist?
I think we're in an extraordinary moment. A week ago, I wrote about the sexual harassment, Weinstein. Oh, great, another predator on his way down. In terms of power, now everyone can come out and talk about it. But I don't know about you, but I've never seen what's happening right now.
Meaning that you think what I just described will change in the future?
I think we're in a moment where things are changing. I've seen so many people come down. I mean, in small publications, in the men who used to get away with this for years are being ejected in Hollywood.
So who's going to change? The men, the third parties,
not
the survivors?
Not the predators.
So who's going to change?
I think it's for, I don't know if it can last, but for a moment, I think we have victims willing to speak out and bystanders doing a little soul searching and saying, I can't do this. Mm-hmm. I've seen it everywhere.
Well,
I think it's amazing.
I mean, survivors, when they're 22-year-old women, mm-hmm. whether it's with a president of the United mm-hmm. States or a powerful movie producer, I hope that you are right. But why that power dynamic hasn't changed.
Right.
So are you as hopeful as EJ is here or no?
Little hopeful.
I think, yeah. I mean, I agree with you that I do think this is a moment, but I also see how this plays out in many other settings where it's the teacher that, everyone kind of knows something's going on, but they don't quite know what. Yeah, and so I think sometimes we look at these celebrity cases and think, oh my goodness, that's so unusual. That's, this monstrous person. And really the monstrous folks are all around us when you look at Me Too, Me Too, Me Too.
Yeah, like but the high profile attention that this has gotten, because the average person who does this doesn't get the same level of attention, right. Will it lead to reform, for lack of a better expression, about how we all deal with this and give more strength to survivors prospectively? And
I think it should give people more, I think it should give the people around the offender more leverage to say, what you're doing I'm not cool with, or what you're doing really makes me wonder what you're up to.
You mean the Tarantinos, the third parties who know about these?
Yeah, I think the third party has the biggest area for change.
I agree with that. Can I ask one last thing? The Advocate is a publication that says they knew about this thing, but because of their no outing policy, at least from what I read today, they decided not to deal with it. I understand a no outing policy vis-a-vis sexual orientation. I don't understand a no outing policy around sexual assault. And by the way, they say they knew that this it was an assaulter.
Libel laws. I mean, if they didn't have someone who was willing to come forward and have evidence, then they couldn't do it.
Well, but if they, like Gawker, had people they
Gawker
trusted
no
without
exists.
No, but and because of this kind of
Yes.
litigation.
Yes.
So essentially, that encourages or elicits silence from.
Well, did the victim want the silence or not? Do
well,
we know?
It seems to me that you can out an aggressor, a predator, an assaulter, and if you want to protect the identity of the individual, can't you do that?
It's very hard.
You deal with survivors all the time. Can you not do that?
To protect the identity of the person
Yeah,
who's
while outing
coming.
the assaulter.
I think it's really, I think for the person who's coming forward, that's going to be their number one concern. So I don't know what the conversation was between Rapp and the Advocate and why he was willing to say what he said.
Is there a smidgen of optimism in you? Because I'd love to leave this on that, where she is, with this much. Do you have this much?
I think I do have this much, and I think people being willing to learn more and get involved and not shy away from this issue will be a major game change.
I hope you're right, Gina. It's great to see you.
Me too.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Good to see you. We appreciate
Thanks
your
for
time.
having us.
Thanks so much.